I need to give you title cards. Being a thoroughly amateur production, I have thoroughly amateur title cards. This is Whiskey for Beginners, and it's a thoroughly amateur production. I am thoroughly amateur. I've currently have the name of the channel set as Whiskey for Beginners by a Whiskey Hick. Why have I done that? Well, it's an experiment to see how I like it. I got a wild hair one night and said I'll try it. And as I recollect, YouTube gives you 2 weeks and then you can change it back or change it to a third thing or what have you. But I am a hick. I'm a Texas hick. I'm proud of it. I'm not going to make no apologies. I can talk better English than you're hearing right now, but I do these things casually. This isn't a sermon. It's not a lecture. It's not a formal presentation. It's just me sitting here telling you what I think about whiskey. Or if you go to the Whiskey Basics playlist on this channel, telling you about the basics of whiskey. And I'm not going to pretend I'm not a hick. Like I say, I'm proud of it. I work in asset protection, and one time this would-be thief who was mad because I wouldn't let him steal in peace called me a hillbilly. He called me another word too, and I get confused because I'm a white boy. But he called me a hillbilly. And, I don't talk to these people more than just being courteous. They start yelling at me. I just stand and look at them. It's not my job to get into confrontations with people. But I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying, why, thank you. Some of my ancestors were hillbillies. At the time of the late unpleasantness, my people were living in Buncombe County, North Carolina. And then after the war, they moved over into eastern Kentucky. And that's right up in the Appalachian Mountains. That's hillbilly country. And I can't tell you for sure one way or the other whether they ever made liquor or drank liquor. I'm pretty sure they probably did drink liquor. And it wouldn't surprise me none if way back there some great 42 times great whatever ancestor of mine had him a little still back in the woods. And if so, I'm proud of him. And I won't go into that, but I have what I think are very good reasons. Meanwhile, what I want to review here, I hate videos that go on and don't get to the point, and here I am doing it. I apologize. I like to get to the point, and I haven't. This is Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. Now, on the on the Bourbon Aficionados group on MeWe, they say that they rate bourbon on the Beam Woodford scale, Beam being the lowest, Woodford Reserve being the highest. Well, if that's the case, this is off the scale. I'm serious. I don't know how good you're going to see that label. But Woodford Reserve is right good bourbon. And then this particular expression, after it's aged for a certain period, I don't know if it has an age statement on it. I haven't looked. I don't see one anywheres. It is a straight whiskey, which means if it does not have an age statement, it has to have aged at least 4 years. After it's aged, they take a second barrel. Now, by law, bourbon has to age in new charred barrels. That's where there's an open flame shoots up through the barrel or sideways, depending on how that particular cooperage does it. And it chars the inside of that barrel, essentially turns the surface of the wood into charcoal. And that's where all the flavor and the color comes from. Well, with the second barrel, they toast it. The flame does not touch the wood. It's just high heat, but no flame for a longer period, and that has a different effect on the wood. It creates different chemical processes. Then they char it on top of that toasting, as they call it, and that gives this a very good flavor. They put it in that toasted charred barrel for several months. This is 90.4 proof. It's a straight whiskey, so there's no artificial colors or flavors. And I'm not going to pour much because I'm reviewing, not a drinking. And this is just a pint. It cost me $29.99 at Total Wine. I would have bought a fifth, but there weren't any fifths on the shelf. It was in the afternoon, and there were holes in the shelves, and they were stocking away. And I've worked in retail 20 years. It'll be 20 years in just a few months. This is April, May, June, 3 months. I'll have been in retail for 20 years, and I know how holes can develop, especially on a busy day. But there weren't any fifths on the shelf, so I got me a pint, which enabled me to buy one other fifth. It's got a nice color to it. It's got decent legs. Now, this is the third review I've done with this same glass, so the legs aren't really going to be properly representative. Oh, man. The reason this is my second favorite bourbon after Balcones Pot Still bourbon is that it is a lot like, for me, it's a lot like that Balcones bourbon. And I understand that Balcones toasts their barrels before charring, which would give them on their initial aging something of the same effect as this second barrel on the Woodford Double Oaked. That is so warm. Got vanilla, caramel, butterscotch, bananas, and it's not just bananas. I've never had Bananas Foster, but it's a brown sugary cinnamony banana smell, and I suspect that's kind of what Bananas Foster is like. That is delicious. And I'm getting alcohol up in my right nostril, which is real sensitive to it. I'm not going to spend the time to really pick apart the nose. I do my full reviews at length on distiller.com and then on MeWe, excuse me, on MeWe in the Bourbon Aficionados and the Whiskey and Whiskey group. Ooh, boy, that's good. There's cinnamon, there's honey, there's oak, there's black pepper. There's things that I didn't sort out on that first sip. Sometimes I've found that after I take a sip or two, if I go back to the nose, I'll detect more, because taste and smell have an intimate connection back in the sinuses and the tongue and all the physical equipment that goes into doing both. Oh yeah, that's good. Got some other kind of spiciness in there that I can't identify. And I am at something, I'm going to have to start that sentence over. I have something of a handicap when it comes to tasting whiskey. My mouth, especially my tongue, is extremely sensitive to heat. I love green chili. I love red chili. I love the taste of all sorts of spice. But it hurts too much. Genuinely, physically hurts for me to eat more than just a tiny dab of it. And so I am not familiar with the taste of a whole lot of spices. I eat mild to spicy food I can, and even then I can't eat it all the time. And so there are spices everybody else is familiar with, and I'm not. But there was some kind of a spice in there I can't identify. And without looking up the mash bill, and I'm not going to do that here, I've done it in the full reviews online. I can't tell you whether this would qualify as a high rye bourbon, but rye in a whiskey mash bill imparts a spiciness to the whiskey. That oak is a coming through now. And on the finish, oh, oak. Oh, man, oak for days. I like an oaky whiskey. And I have not yet found one that has too much oak for me. It might be too much oak for somebody else. But I like oak. I like a dark, smoky, oaky whiskey. I also like a sweet whiskey. And so when you get them together, as you have here, I like it. This is good bourbon, Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. It's about twice the price of the regular Woodford Reserve. And so you may not want to splurge on it all the time. You may want to get a pint rather than a fifth. But I do recommend you get this double oak juice. It's real good.